Welcome back to Patrick Christie's Tonight. Why have we all been given survival guides across Europe? But first, is climate change actually racist? It's time now for the head-to-head. As we've been hearing already tonight, ministers have privately admitted that net zero risks triggering a global financial crash by the end of the decade. But not only will climate change make you poorer, apparently now it's also racist. In fact, that should be net zero making you poorer. But anyway, yes, a government-commissioned review into the national curriculum has been told that teachers should use the environment to help teach kids about race. The submission from a race equality pressure group recommends teachers educate pupils about the impact of climate change on developing countries like Africa. And just last year, Greenpeace claimed that the so-called climate crisis is apparently the result of systemic racism.
We can't ignore the fact that people who've often been on the front line of climate-related disasters have been people of colour. Sadly, the reality is that the climate crisis has been impacting people of colour for years. There are a lot of complicated reasons as to why. The simple version is this. The lives of people in countries across Africa and Asia, as well as indigenous peoples all over the world, have been deliberately ignored and devalued by massive corporations and countries in the West for centuries.
Well, who knew? Hey, going ahead on this now are the co-founder of Together, Alan Miller, and the Just Stop Oil spokesperson, Dr. Bing Jones. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Alan, I'll start with you. Is climate change racist?
This is preposterous. We've got two double whammies going on at the same time. One, the presentation in our schools now with this new curriculum. We're never quite sure from Bridget Phillipson what it is, except for we're not going to have choice anymore with academies that have had consistently very good standards over the last 10 years and improved them immensely. But we've got this presentation that we've got this immense crisis, an existential crisis, and we must tell our children and petrify them that we're out of control and destroying the planet and something must be done right now. And at the same time, it's part of the decolonize the curriculum, the idea that we're cis, white, mad, bad, dangerous, dead white men, and everything that we talk about in history, in terms of history and culture, is toxic and problematic. And we now need to revise all of that and remind ourselves how racist we are. And it's intertwined with the idea of the environment. It's thoroughly scurrilous, actually, and it's degrading of our education. And it represents what's happened to our institutions, an ideological attack by this government that doesn't care for standards and quality and wants to drive them down.
Dr. Bing Jones, I'll bring you in here now. Is climate change racist?
I'm struggling to know where to start here in this conversation. Climate.
We've had a while. We booked 2 hours ago.
Physics. It's physics. It's got nothing to. What's racist, Patrick? What's racist is ignoring it. All right. 1% of the population produces the same emissions produces twice the emissions as the poorest 50%. The 1% rich produce twice as much as 50% of the poor. One person in America produces 360 times as much emissions as somebody in Burundi. Of course, ignoring it, as you constantly do. There are two stories here. One says that there's no climate crisis and everything's okay. And the other one says the climate crisis is the biggest problem that we face. And that's the story. Yeah, but
the biggest problem is therefore caused, Dr. Bing, is it not, by China and India? Well, I don't think that's very racist, is it?
This is, as your previous panel brought out, this is an international problem. Right. And the only solution will be, firstly, to admit that we've got a problem, secondly, to admit that it's caused by fossil fuels, and thirdly, to admit that the only answer is an international agreement, a treaty from all countries to stop burning fossil fuels. Really quickly, all the scientists agree this is a major problem. You refuse to talk about the size of the problem. We have to stop burning across the world. using an international treaty.
Alan, I'll bring you back in here. I do wonder whether or not we've just had that big report that came out yesterday about the fact that if we pursue the net zero targets at the level that we're at the moment, it could well cause a global financial crash, wipe 10% off our GDP and make the poorest people in Britain poorer. And I wonder if now this is a way of making sure that we all stay on track with our net zero agenda, Alan, because if we don't, then we are racist.
The thing that we need to remember is over the last 300 years, the transformation of everybody's experience in the world from one that we had pre-medieval society where everything was slow, where people died at the age of 30, and we had immense limits on everything. We've transformed ourselves, and we've transformed ourselves materially so that everybody could be the beneficiaries of that through fossil fuels and through merchant wealth and transformation and industrialization. Some who are Malthusians and think this is the worst thing that we can be, is to be human and aspirational, want to shut that down. We've heard it from Al Gore in the past. But we have to remember that all the horror stories that, you know, we're going to get to 2000, we're going to die, or we're all going to get flooded, or, you know, prior to that, it was global cooling that was the big fear and panic. We are innovative. We can transform reality through innovation, being dynamic. We can create more wealth for everyone. And the idea that we shouldn't use fossil fuels is for the birds. We should invest in nuclear. We should look at other elements. But all it will do, Patrick, is it will make us poorer quicker, and actually the gig's up. No more net zero. People are recognising it, and it's absolutely not racist to say.
Dr. Bing, can I ask you this? So if we accept a couple of things, firstly, that climate change is racist, right? And that the only way to solve it is international agreements, okay? Or global agreements, really. If I look at who some of the biggest producers of CO2 are, you've got China, India, Russia, Indonesia and Iran. They're all in the top 7. Saudi Arabia brings up the rear there for the top 10. So you're going to go and what? Negotiate with Xi Jinping, Modi, Putin, the Ayatollah and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, are you, to try to get some kind of international agreement? And surely if it was racist, they'd want to do something about it, wouldn't they?
We've got to start by admitting that we've got the problem. That's the first thing, which you just refused to do. There are two sets of stories here.
Dr. Bing, if you think I'm the problem, Dr. Bing, if you think I'm the problem and not Xi Jinping, Putin, the Ayatollah, and whoever's in charge of Saudi Arabia, then I'm sorry, you need to give your head a wobble.
This Telegraph article, which you sent previously, which is about the a report from the Runnymede folks, that is basically trying to point out my same point. There are two stories. One's a lie and the other's the truth. It's saying that children should be taught the truth. And really what we need is everybody being taught the truth. We need a public information campaign, a bit like we had for AIDS, pointing out the fact that 1 in 6 people have no flood insurance in the UK, that 2 million people in the UK are liable to floods, that those fires in Los Angeles cost probably $200 billion. That's the price of running the NHS for a whole year. We are facing real problems. We are facing real problems, and your listeners are wiser and cleverer than you think. 75% of people know and feel that they're worried about the climate. 75% of people think the government should do more and quicker, and 3/4 of people will be willing to act. So you are on the wrong.
Well, I'm not actually, because what you've done yet again is you've skewed the data, OK? When you ask people questions like, are you willing to act to stop your house burning down, they say yes. And then you say, are you willing to pay for it? And they say no. So there you go. Anyway, right, thank you very much, chaps. That's the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, and the Just Stop Oil spokesperson, Dr. Bing Jones. Coming up, an urgent manhunt is underway after